Crossing the darkness, the beginning of transformation, there comes a moment in every seeker's path when the light that once illuminated their journey seems to vanish. What was once clear becomes obscure. Familiar ground crumbles beneath the feet, and a chilling silence replaces the once vibrant inner voice. This is not a sign of failure, but an invitation. The darkness, rather than a void, becomes a womb, a sacred space, where the old dissolves to make room for something ancient and luminous. It is in this silence that the first whispers of transformation begin. The Sabiduría Ancestral speaks not through comfort, but through the tension of uncertainty. The energy that once flowed outward now turns inward, initiating a process rarely understood by the unprepared. In ancient civilizations, initiates were often blindfolded and led into underground chambers for rites of passage. These rituals symbolized the descent into the unknown, a descent not into punishment, but into the mysteries occultos of the self. The darkness was not meant to be feared, but embraced. Within those caverns, sacred texts prohibidos were recited, containing codes of transformation passed down through veiled generations. The initiate was stripped of name, status, and identity, all constructs of the ego, so the true self could emerge, luminous and untouched. Our modern descent may not happen in physical temples, but in the collapse of relationships, careers, beliefs, illusions. And yet even in the collapse there is a strange presence, a quiet knowing that this disintegration serves a hidden purpose. The pain becomes an instrument of refinement, a fire of alchemia, interior that consumes what no longer serves. It is through this fire that our essence is tempered, just as ancient blacksmiths transformed raw metal into sacred blades with cosmic energy. This phase of the journey is not about finding answers, but about unlearning. The light we once sought outside flickers quietly within, reminding us that what is real cannot be destroyed, only remembered. Illuminação Espiritual does not arise from certainty, but from surrender. What you are facing now is not chaos, but initiation. The soul knows this darkness well, for it has walked through countless veils before. Each shadow you encounter is a mirror, not of your failure, but of your transformation. Do not resist the unraveling. Let it pull you deeper. Trust the rhythm of disorientation, for it signals that you are crossing the threshold between the known and the infinite. The ancients called this the night sea journey, where the traveler must let go of the shore without seeing the other side. You are not lost. You are being recalibrated by forces older than time, by a wisdom encoded in your very being, and just when it seems that nothing remains but silence and despair, a spark ignites. A flicker that cannot be traced to logic or will, but arises from a sacred place beyond comprehension. This is the call of the next phase, the gentle echo of the soul beginning to speak. The deeper you go into this sacred night, the louder that voice becomes, but it will not scream to be heard, it will whisper. And that whisper will guide you to the next revelation, that within this darkness, something has always been speaking, waiting, calling. And so, the question arises, if the soul is whispering, are you ready to listen? Awakening the voice of the soul in the stillness that follows the descent, a new sense begins to awaken, one not governed by the mind, but by a deeper current. It is subtle, often drowned beneath the static of the external world, yet it has always been there. This is the voice of the soul. It does not argue, it does not demand, it simply speaks in silence, in symbols, in sensations that defy language. Ancient mystics spoke of this voice as a divine frequency, only audible when one has withdrawn from the noise of illusion. In those sacred moments of pause, when the ego grows quiet, this inner guide emerges, radiant, precise, and timeless. To truly hear this voice is to enter a sacred dialogue with the cosmos. The old sages claimed that every human being carries within them a fragment of the universal intelligence, a spark of energia cosmica encoded with memory, destiny, and meaning. This spark speaks through dreams, through synchronicities, through the gentle pull towards certain places, people, or ideas. The challenge is not its presence, but our willingness to attune to it. In our obsession with external validation, we have forgotten how to listen. But the voice waits, patiently, silently, like an old friend who knows you've been lost and never left your side. Many have reported that during moments of solitude, deep meditation, forest walks, gazing into firelight, a presence begins to form. It is not external, yet it feels bigger than the self. Some call it the higher self, others the spirit or the divine witness. Regardless of name, it carries one function: to remind you of who you truly are beneath the layers of fear and programming. Textos Prohibidos from Hermetic and Vedic traditions refer to this presence as the inner guru, the immortal guide, who knows your path before your conscious mind does, not to control you, but to realign you with the original design of your soul's architecture. But why is this voice so often ignored? Because it does not compete with chaos. It waits for clarity. It is drowned out by the ego's urgency, the world's demands, and the conditioned need for proof. Yet it is in your quiet choices. The moment you say no to something that feels wrong without knowing why, the instinct that urges you to move in a certain direction, the intuition that feels like a whisper in the heart, that this voice speaks clearest. These are not coincidences. They are soul-coded messages rising from the alchemia interior that connects your earthly self with your eternal self. And now that you've begun to hear it, even faintly, what will you do? Will you silence it again in favor of logic and fear? Or will you allow it to grow louder through trust and surrender? Because once the voice is heard, it cannot be forgotten. It will echo in your decisions, in your dreams, in your restlessness. It will gently pull you forward, not with force, but with remembering. And that remembrance brings us to a deeper truth, one that has been buried beneath lifetimes of forgetting. You were never unworthy, never lost. You have simply forgotten how divine you truly are. Remembering your worth and divine nature, there is a forgotten truth echoing through the chambers of your being, a truth older than language and untouched by time. You were not born incomplete. You were not created to seek outside what already burns within. The illusion of inadequacy was sown by systems that feared your illumination as spiritual, institutions that thrived by convincing you that you were broken, that salvation lived beyond your grasp. But deep in the sanctuary of your soul, the ancient knowing persists. The Sabiduría Ancestral has always spoken of your divine origin, not as metaphor, but as metaphysical reality. You are not becoming divine. You are rediscovering that you have always been. Throughout history, those who remembered their sacred worth were often silenced, exiled, or labeled heretics. Yet their legacy remains encoded in texts prohibidos, scriptures hidden beneath temples, scrolls buried in deserts, and whispers passed between mystics. They all point to the same revelation. Your divinity is not earned, it is inherited. It is not a prize, but a presence. You are a vessel of energia cosmica, wrapped in flesh, navigating illusions. To remember this is not arrogance, it is liberation. It is the reclamation of your birthright, a right stripped by centuries of spiritual amnesia. Many wander through life seeking validation, from lovers, from status, from fleeting approval. But no amount of praise can anchor the soul if it has forgotten its own light. This is the trap. External mirrors reflecting distorted images, never the essence. True remembrance begins when you turn inward, when you meet your own gaze without judgment and find the sacred spark behind your eyes. It is here that Alquimia Interior begins its quiet work, melting layers of shame, fear, and comparison. You begin to see yourself not through the world's perception, but through the eyes of the infinite. To awaken to your worth is to shift your entire vibrational state. It alters your choices, your relationships, your destiny. You begin to attract not from lack, but from presence. You no longer chase love, you radiate it. You no longer beg for purpose, you become it. This transformation is not dramatic. It is subtle, sacred, and seismic. The voice of the soul, now clearer, becomes a guiding star, not leading you to something, but back to yourself. This is the path of self-initiation, where you step into your own temple, adorned not in robes or rituals, but in remembrance. And when you remember, truly remember who you are, something shifts in the fabric of reality. Doors open without keys, answers arrive without questions. The universe, once perceived as separate, begins to respond to the pulse of your being. Because the moment you claim your divine nature, the cosmos recognizes itself in you. And it is here, in this holy recognition, that healing begins. A healing not imposed but revealed, one that clears the path to something even deeper, the restoration of your energetic alignment, the next sacred step in the unfolding journey of your soul. Energetic and spiritual healing is not the fixing of what is broken, but the remembering of what was never truly damaged. Beneath the scars, the wounds, and the emotional residue lies an untouched core, radiant, whole, and waiting. This core is your true self, uncorrupted by experience, eternal in essence. The process of healing, then, is not a battle against pain, but a reunion with this inner sanctum. According to ancient teachings passed down through Textos Prohibidos, the body is not just matter, it is memory. Every organ stores echoes of unspoken grief, suppressed truths, and dreams deferred. And within that storage lies the key to transformation through Energia Cosmica. To initiate spiritual healing, the ancients began with the breath, not just as a biological function, but as a sacred current, the bridge between the physical and the ethereal. Each inhalation becomes an invocation, each exhale a release. In Buddhist and Taoist traditions, conscious breathing is seen as a form of alquimia interior, capable of transmuting dense frequencies into light. With the breath, one can guide awareness into wounded spaces, illuminating them with compassionate presence. This light, not metaphorical, but energetic, begins to dissolve old patterns encoded in the flesh. Pain is not the enemy. It is the messenger, calling for presence, not avoidance. Visualization practices were once reserved for initiates within mystery schools. These practices involved guiding streams of luminous energy through the meridians, chakras, and subtle fields of the body. Light in these teachings was not just symbolic, but alive, intelligent, divine. The soul responds to this light like a seed responds to sunlight, unfolding gently. One need not understand the mechanics for the transformation to occur. Simply setting the intention, the clear, sovereign command to heal, opens ancient gateways within. It is the merging of attention, breath, and cosmic will that activates the body's sacred architecture. The modern world often confuses healing with suppression, numbing discomfort, silencing symptoms, performing rituals without presence. True healing, however, requires vulnerability, the courage to feel, to face, to surrender. It is a sacred dismantling. The soul invites you not to escape pain, but to walk into it, carrying the torch of awareness. As you do, the pain begins to reveal its deeper nature, not as a curse, but as a code, a message encrypted by the universe itself, guiding you back to balance. When you meet your wounds with light, They cease to be barriers and become portals. And through those portals, something remarkable happens. The body begins to realign, emotions once stagnant begin to flow, thoughts once heavy begin to dissolve, the soul, long silenced, sings again. This is not the end of the journey, it is the rebirth within it. Because once you have touched the realm of healing, you gain access to a deeper form of power, the ability to transform not only pain into peace, but fear into love. And it is through this next alchemical doorway, the transmutation of fear, that your sacred power truly begins to awaken. Inner alchemy, transmuting fear into love. What if fear was never your enemy, but your untrained teacher? What if, hidden within its tremble, lived the raw essence of your potential, waiting for refinement? The ancient masters of Alquimia Interior understood something our modern minds have forgotten. Fear is not darkness. It is unrefined light. It is energy in its most primal form, dense only because it has not yet been seen with clarity. In the sacred schools of Egypt, Tibet, and Persia, initiates were taught to approach fear not with resistance, but reverence. It was a force to be transmuted, not avoided. For within fear resides the dormant memory of your power. To begin this transmutation, one must first face fear with presence, not to conquer it, but to listen. Fear speaks in the language of contraction, tightening the breath, shortening the gaze, narrowing the possibilities. But presence, true presence, softens this grip. When you hold space for fear, it begins to reveal its source, a forgotten wound, a moment of loss, a belief formed in isolation. Here the work of spiritual transformation begins. Just as ancient alquimistas transmuted lead into gold, you begin to transform survival energy into sacred insight. This is not metaphor. It is physics of the soul, ancient and precise. In the sacred scrolls of the Essenes and the Nag Hammadi texts Prohibidos, fear was referred to as the shadow of love, not its opposite, but its mirror, showing us where light is needed most. Fear is the signal that you are on the edge of awakening. Where there is fear, there is buried truth. The ego resists this, for fear threatens its fragile sense of control. But the higher self rejoices, knowing that every tremor of fear is a gate to greater love. When you stop running from the fear and walk toward it with compassion, you enter a state of quantum healing where illusions fall away. The process is not always graceful. Emotions will rise, memories will surface. You may feel as though you are unraveling, but this unraveling is sacred. It is the shedding of skins you no longer need. As you move through fear, you reclaim fragments of yourself that were once exiled. Love begins to flow into spaces once ruled by shame, anger, and silence. The transformation is cellular. Your body remembers its divinity. Your mind begins to think in patterns of truth. This is the essence of Energia Cosmica, not power over, but power within, a pulsing force that dissolves separation and restores union. And just as you begin to feel whole, a deeper call begins to emerge, a pull toward the source of that love, not romantic, not conditional, but divine. The love that speaks without words, guides without force, and remains when all else falls away. It is here that the journey takes its final turn. The ego, having played its role, begins to dissolve, and the soul prepares to reunite with something far older than identity, a return to the original self, to the cosmic remembrance of who you have always been. And that awakening leads us to the final revelation, the sacred union with the higher self. Ego dissolution and union with the higher self. The ego, that intricate construction of names, fears, memories, and masks, is not your enemy. It is a scaffolding, a temporary lens through which you once viewed the world in order to survive it. But survival is not your destiny. Awakening is. And there comes a moment when the scaffolding must fall, when the false identity forged from fear and comparison can no longer contain the truth trying to emerge. The ancient sages warned, this moment feels like death. But it is not death. It is the collapse of illusion. It is the Sabadoria ancestral, reclaiming its throne within your being. What falls away was never you. The dissolution of the ego is not destruction. It is integration. It is the moment the fragment remembers the whole. This shift often begins subtly, a loss of interest in things that once mattered, a craving for silence, a magnetic pull toward the unknown. The voice of the soul, once muffled, beneath the noise of shoulds and musts, begins to speak in full sentences. You start to remember your origin, not as theory, but as vibration. Textos Prohibidos from the early Gnostic traditions describe this as the Great Return, a return to the undivided self, the divine witness who has observed every incarnation silently, waiting. In this space, judgment dissolves. You stop, labeling experiences as good or bad, success or failure. Everything becomes experience. Everything becomes fuel for the sacred fire of Alquimia Interior. The higher self is not above you. It is within you and always has been. It is the aspect of you that has never been afraid, never doubted, never forgotten. When the ego finally bows, exhausted from its need to control and protect, the higher self steps forward, not to dominate, but to lead. And you begin to walk with a new kind of knowing, not based on logic, but on resonance, on truth that vibrates, rather than argues. Those who have touched this union often describe it not as a moment, but a state, a soft, steady state of grace. It does not mean pain ends, but suffering dissolves. You begin to perceive life as a sacred game, not trivial, but divinely orchestrated. Every encounter, every shadow, every joy becomes a movement of the same energy, a cosmic dance designed to awaken you. From this state, the world does not change, you do, and thus, your very perception alters reality. This is the final unlocking of Energia Cosmica, not by force, but by frequency. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer seek, you remember. And now, as the veil fully lifts, you realize this was never a journey of becoming. It was a journey of unveiling. The divine self has always been here, watching, waiting, guiding. Your fears, your pain, even your confusion were the very keys that opened the gate. What lies ahead is not a finish line, but a portal, the beginning of a new way of being, where duality dissolves and only presence remains. And so, the final question emerges like a whisper through the cosmos. Now that you've remembered who you are, what will you do with this light? What if everything you were taught about yourself was a lie? What if your fears, your doubts, and even your failures were never signs of weakness, but encrypted messages guiding you toward your awakening? There are truths hidden between the lines of ancient manuscripts, truths so powerful that they were locked away, whispered only in temples lost to time. For centuries, these teachings remained buried, protected from those who would misuse them, and from those who simply weren't ready to remember. But something has changed. You found this video, and that is no accident. The universe never speaks loudly. It places symbols in your path. And if you're watching this now, it means the signal has reached you. In the next few minutes, you'll be guided through a journey of profound remembrance. A path that begins in darkness, wins through the sacred codes of energetic healing, and ends in a revelation that has the power to shift the foundation of your reality. This isn't about dogma. It's not about belief. It's about direct experience. Your direct experience of the truth that has always been inside you, waiting. So I ask you, are you ready to see what lies beyond the veil? Are you ready to remember the light that was never lost, only hidden? If this resonates with something, deep inside you, something ancient, then like this video, leave your affirmation in the comments, and subscribe to begin a journey most never dare to walk. Now that you've walked through the forgotten gates and remembered the truth hidden in your soul, I leave you with one final question. What other parts of yourself are still waiting to be awakened? If something inside you shifted, even slightly, don't let this moment fade. Share your reflections in the comments. Tell us what you remembered, what you released, or what you're still searching for. Your story may be the key that unlocks someone else's awakening. And if you feel called to continue this journey through the hidden layers of consciousness and cosmic memory, subscribe now and join us in the next revelation, where we'll explore truths that even the ancient once dared to whisper only in shadows.